Hello everyone and welcome to what seems to be the craziest game of round 2 of the Croatia Grand Chess Tour being played in Zagreb. It's Jan Nepomniachtchi versus Fabiano Caruana. It's really a crazy game, no engine preparation, no anything of the sort. This is real chess and it's this game has so many complications that it's really, like I said, or maybe I haven't, not for the faint of heart. So without further ado, let's check out some of the photos as we didn't have any from the previous video. There you have, here is Magnus Carlsen with, I don't know who the lady is. I think she's some sort of a delegate for the Norwegian-Croatian relations. If any of you do know, do share in the comments. And she was supposed to make the first move for Magnus in his game against Anand yesterday, but instead she just gave Magnus a big kiss. That of course is a joke. Of course she made the first move, the kiss was just a bonus, or maybe she's just whispering something to his ear, I have no idea. And we have a very nice photo of this game here. There you have it, Fabi and Nepo, a nice view through the audience. So let's just enjoy that for a moment, and now we can check out the game. So we have a Sicilian game, and it's well, sort of a World Chess Championship line, but they then they take the game somewhere else. We have c5, so Sicilian defense, knight to f3, knight to c6, and d4. We have c captures, knight captures, knight to f6, and now comes knight to c3, and here e5. So the knight has to decide where to go. Of course, the knight will go to b5. With d6, the same as in the World Chess Championship match, knight d5, knight captures, e captures, and now you can decide whether you want to go to b8 or to e7. Magnus tried both. Here for this game, Nepo goes knight to b8, and this will be following the game. A lot of games have been played in this line recently. As you'll see, Nepo goes a4 with bishop to e7, and here bishop to e2 is basically the main move. Nepo already had this position against Magnus Carlsen in the Altibox Norway Championship this year. Also, Nepo, that game was a draw, but interestingly, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave also had this position against Magnus Carlsen. No, I think MVL had it against Carlsen in the Norway Championship, and Nepo had it somewhere in the Blitz section of the Abidjan Côte d'Ivoire tournament, but both of those games ended in a draw. And interestingly, Peter Svidler also had this position against Caruana in the Grand Chess Classic, and also bishop to e2 was played, and also that game ended in a draw. But here Nepo goes bishop to d2, and it's very interesting. Already on move 10 of this very analyzed line, we have a completely new game. So how will Caruana deal with it? Let's just see. The idea is, once this knight is under, you want to push this pawn to a5, and once the knight is under attack, you want to play it to a3, and you want your bishop to be guarding the a5 pawn. And also, it's a very devious way of going after the d6 pawn with bishop to b4, which you'll see later. So Caruana castles with a5 by Nepo, as we've already mentioned, a6, knight to a3, now the bishop nicely guards the a5 pawn, and knight to d7. With knight to c4 now, going after the d6 pawn this way, and f5 now, the usual way black will play this line, and bishop to b4. So the d6 pawn is pressured, you have to defend it somehow. Fabi chooses rook to f6, which defends the pawn, and also is ready to transfer the rook if needed to start an attack against the king side. But there is also a very interesting line that starts with f4, just giving up the pawn here, as you will win it back. For example, bishop captures, knight captures, and now you can go knight to f6, and the queen and the knight are attacking the d5 pawn. So you either move the knight and lose the pawn, or if you want to protect the pawn, you have to capture on c8, rook captures, and then c4. Okay, you're guarding the pawn, but now e4 is coming, and with your king still being in the center, seems like a very dangerous position to play. Obviously, Fabi decided it wasn't the way to go. But okay, after bishop to b4, Fabi goes rook to f6, he defends the d6 pawn, and now queen to d2, just developing the queen, and maybe even preparing to castle queenside. We have rook to g6 by Fabi, now hindering the development of the light square bishop as the g2 pawn is under pressure. With g3, and now e4, in some lines making room for the knight on e5. But also it's a very dangerous pawn, with Nepo's king still being in the center of the board. e3 could come at any point, could be dangerous. With h4 by Nepo, preparing h5, and here with b5. pushing the knight back, or inviting white to capture en passant. And usually when white pushes his pawn all the way to a5, it's almost never a good idea to push your pawn to b5 to allow this en passant capture, because you will just be left with a weak a6 pawn. But okay, we have knight captures on b6, and now knight to a5, going after this c6 square. And there's not much you can do about it. Fabi plays bishop to d7, but Nepo first castles queenside, and he will go knight to c6 either way, because he will either have a monster knight, or after Fabi captures, he will get a very nice passed pawn on c6. So bishop to f6 now, as Nepo castled the queenside. Fabi now wants to transfer his pieces to attack the queenside with knight to c6, and now you don't want to capture it. You would get, well, if you capture, then you get a very nice passed pawn, and also the d6 pawn is attacked 3 times, so not something you want to do. So we have queen to e8 by Fabi, and now comes king to b1. And again, here you have to decide what to do. Here we have a very interesting line. Fabi played king to h8, but we have a very interesting line that starts with e3. And now white would have to decide what to do here, and it's not all that clear. Either you trade queens, which ends queen captures, f captures, and now you can go knight captures on d5. You remove the defender of the knight on c6. And then, of course, you don't capture, but rather bishop to c4 check first. And then after bishop captures, you will get bishop captures on d5, bishop captures, rook captures, and then rook captures on g3, rook captures on f5, and you get to this position where everything is pretty much traded down, but the bishops are of the same color. Another thing you could do after e3 is just play f captures on e3. You say, I don't want to trade anything, but then black starts an attack with knight a4, your b2 pawn is under attack, and here you go bishop a3, you defend it, but then again rook captures on g3, black gets a lot of play. So this is one way Fabi could have treated this position, but he first decides for king to h8. Now Nepo no longer allows e3. We have h5, pushing the rook back, rook to h6, and now queen to e3, blocking the pawn and also attacking the knight here. We have knight to a4, now defending the b2 pawn, and now no longer can you defend it with the bishop to a3. This would be bad, because after captures and captures, black would just capture on b2, and after you capture, go rook ab8, the bishop is pinned, and you will just grab it and enjoy a nice position. So after knight to a4, we have c3. And now comes rook captures on h5, which isn't the best idea for Caruana here. If you want, it's a really complicated position, but if you want, feel free to pause the video and try to find the best idea for Caruana in this position. Just have a nice sip of my water. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent finder of great moves in complicated positions. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop captures on c6 is the move you want to play. Because after d captures and queen captures, what do you play here? Well, you do have to play something. Rook captures on d6 is the best move, and then you get queen to b7. The threat is a5, and there is not much white can do about it. Whatever you play, let's say you play bishop e2, a normal move, you get a5, and then after bishop to a3, you get knight captures on c3, and here white just falls apart. As of course the pawn is pinned, so not much to do there, and well, it's a really ugly position to be in. So Fabi did not go for that, although it seems to be great, but it's really a disgusting line, if you agree. Fabi went for rook captures on h5. He grabs the pawn and offers a trade, but on the other hand, he also gives Nepo an semi-open h-file to use for attack. We have rook captures, queen captures, and now bishop to e2. Also, Nepo gets to develop his bishop with an attack on the queen. Queen back to e8, and now king to c2. Nepo knows that there's a lot of pressure going on against this c3 pawn, so the king will also help out in defending it. With h6 by Fabi, getting some breathing room for his king in. And now, once again, what do you play here? Well, you have to decide what to do. You could go for bishop captures on d6. Seems like it's a free pawn. But then again, you get bishop captures, captures, and queen captures. And again, your queen side will be under attack for the rest of the game. So, not worth it to grab this pawn. Here, Fabi went queen to f4. And, sorry, Nepo went queen to f4. With ideas that if this bishop ever captures, then you can eliminate the f5 pawn. And here Fabi played a5, which is a super interesting move, and it is at this moment that everyone became interested in this game. Because he's just offering a pawn, and okay, you do get an open file for your rook, but still, if you don't have any ideas on what to do after this, it's well, it's just a free pawn. Nepo grabs it, and it's actually a very good sacrifice. But what's interesting is that here, after sacrificing the pawn, Fabi went into a deep think, I think around 17 minutes, which can be odd at times, as first you want to figure out what you want to do and only then sacrifice the pawn. But here Fabi sacrifices the pawn and then you know, makes sure of what he's about to do. And again, feel free to pause the video here and try to find the best idea for black in this position, as it's really insane. I'll give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent mover of bishops. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop to b5. This is the strongest move. You attack the bishop on e2, and now what do you do here? You can, well, you don't want to capture and allow the black queen to come into the attack. You can defend it with queen e3, which is not all that great. After queen e3, you get knight to c5, and now, of course, if you capture, then the knight here becomes weak. But there are other problems. For example, bishop to a4 check would win material. So here, your best bet is to play bishop captures on c5, and after bishop to a4 check, you can block it with b3, but then you get a rook captures here. Your bishop is still under attack, so you can either move it or capture here. But after, let's say, bishop captures, you will get queen captures on a4, and now you're done for. Whatever you play, if you go this way, you're getting checkmated, and if you go to a dark square, bishop g5 just wins the queen. So this would have been best, bishop to b5. And if you just block it with c4, well, then your b2 pawn is no longer defended. So first black will attack the queen, queen e5, and bishop to e5. And after queen to e3, you're just going to go back with the bishop, and then white's pawn structure in front of the king is completely ruined. You're just going to really enjoy playing this game. So this was the best course of action for Fabi, but he decided to go for a more complicated line, knight captures on c3. And now he asks Nepo, what do you want to do? It seems very unnatural to capture with the bishop, as after bishop recaptures, the knight on a5 will be undefended. But this is actually the best course of defense for white here. Bishop captures, and now after king captures, rook captures on a5. But now queen captures on d6, and although it looks very ugly to have your king on c3, it would be the best line of defense for white. Here Nepo wanted to defend everything. He played b captures on c3, and now of course Fabi gets this check in, bishop to a4 check. With king to b1, of course, you cannot go to c1, bishop g5 still wins the queen, so bishop captures on d1, bishop captures on d1, and now queen to b5. Fabi continues in the strongest way possible with some very nice threats. Rook captures here is a threat as the bishop is pinned, queen to f1 also a threat going after the light square bishop here. Even though Nepo has two bishops for a rook, it will be very hard to get out of this. With knight to b3, the strongest move, getting the knight out of the way. And now, here is the really important question. What do you do here? Feel free to pause the video and try to find the best move for Fabi. Just, you know, give it your best. While I give it, you know. For those of you who were able to do it, you are an excellent grabber of pawns and attacker of bishops, because queen captures on d5 is the way to go. You grab a pawn, which is always nice, and also it comes with an attack on the bishop. So it does look like there's no problem here. But Fabi decides against this, and Fabi actually plays bishop to g5 here. And Nepo just plays queen captures on f5. So now Nepo is defending the d5 pawn, and he grabbed the pawn. So there's no good explanation on why Fabi allowed this, why he didn't just capture this and attack the bishop, and only after Nepo moves the bishop, then he can play whatever. But here you have to see what to do. First we have to check if queen to a4 is winning, because okay, queen to a2 is the threat of checkmate as the bishop is covering the c1 square, But here, white actually has a beautiful defense. Because first you have to play f4, block the bishop, and offer en passant to clear this diagonal for your bishop. This is, this is what it takes to defend this with white. And after e captures on f3 en passant, you will play bishop to a5. This is the beauty here. Now you block queen to a2, and here there's just no way to continue the attack. Rook captures on a5 seems beautiful, because if you capture the rook, then you get queen captures on e1 with check, but white has everything covered. Queen c8 check, king to h7, and now bishop to c2 check. The reason why you had to play f4 and allow this en passant, this comes with check, and after g6 you will just have a nice perpetual, or you can just play queen to c7 check and even win the rook here, and now white would have a better position. King g8, queen captures, and just a better position for white now, as white is up a piece. So queen to a4, although seemingly deadly, doesn't work, and Fabi finds this continuation that doesn't make it work. He plays queen to f1 instead, goes after this bishop, and again, there's only one way to defend this for Nepo. For example, if you go king c2, you just lose the game. Rook a2 check, king b1, rook captures here, the queen is under attack, the bishop is under attack. You would be completely lost here. So Nepo plays queen to g4, he defends the bishop, and now we have rook to f8 by Fabi, still trying to get this rook f2 in, and here a brilliant defense by Nepo. King b2, just putting the king in the line of fire, unpinning the bishop. He allows rook captures on f2 with check, and now he blocks bishop to c2. And now, what do you do here? Again, I have to ask you to pause the video one more time, because there is only one good continuation here for black, and you will, it will be nice for you to practice how to feel in a certain position. Are you better? Are you worse? Are you just, drawish? So, okay, for those of you who found it, congratulations, you are an excellent assessor of positions. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop to c1 check is the best move, but it's super hard to find, and it's basically a move that forces a draw. Because after knight captures, now you play queen g2 and you attack the bishop here. So if white doesn't want to allow this, first you play queen c8 check. After king h7, you get, well, you have to allow rook captures here. So you play king b3, just so the capture doesn't come with check. And now black has to capture, or he just down material. So after you capture, now you get queen to f5 check, and you will have a draw by perpetual checking. After you go, let's say here, check here, check here, check here. If you go here, then another check on the light square. You will just use this diagonal to keep checking the black king. So after bishop to c2, Fabi did not play bishop to c1 check. He wanted to go for the win. He played queen to c4. But now we have queen to e6 by Nepo, going after this pawn here. And now Fabi really doesn't have a good move here. Fabi played bishop to f6, now pinning the pawn here. The threat is queen captures bishop, but Nepo just grabs a pawn. Queen captures on d6. So the second pawn Fabi just gave to Nepo for no reason, and this is now not to be forgiven. Now the problem is you cannot start pushing your e pawn. If you push something like e3, seems very good, but the bishop guards h7, queen to f8 is just mate. So here Fabi, after going into a deep think, not too long of a think, as he was really low on time, he played rook captures on c2, wanted to eliminate this bishop that covers the h7 square. We have king captures, and now queen to d3 check. We have king to b2, and now e3. Fabi now hopes to get this pass pawn all the way, but queen to e6. Now Nepo knows that while the queen is guarding the e1 square, he can push c4 at any moment, and the bishop will also be covering the e1 square, so it doesn't seem very likely that you will be queening your pawn here. Oh, okay, you still can push it because of the pin here, but you want to play king to a3 and only then push c4. So Fabi played king e2, pawn to e2, and we have king to e3. So you still can't promote it as it's unguarded. And the problem with queen d1 is that you just play queen e8 check, and after king h7, queen e4 check, king to h8, and now you push c4, and everything is fine. There's no queening the pawn. The bishop and queen guard the e1 square. So here Fabi played bishop to g5, and now we have d6. Nepo starts pushing his own pass pawn as well. We have queen a6 check, king to b2, and now queen back to d3. but d7. Nepo now also threatens check and d8 to win the queen. So king to h7, and now finally c4, grabbing hold of the e1 square. Bishop to f6 check, even that is not a problem. King to a3, we have queen to c2, and it does seem dangerous, but even queen to b2 does nothing, as the king can always escape to a4, and the knight does an excellent job of guarding the c1 and a1 squares, which the black queen can use to deliver checks. So here, Nepo played one more move, and it was after that move that Fabi resigned. So here, Nepo played queen captures on f6, and he laughed at Fabi for having no pieces left on the board, and Fabi said, yes, you are correct, and it was in this position that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game. So yeah, he resigned, as after g captures, you just get another queen into the game, and the bishop still covers the e1 square, so there is no point in continuing here. And like we said, the knight covers a1, c1, so there are no checks. It's all excellent here for white. So yeah, and we do have one more photo. It's a photo of the two of them talking about the game, analyzing it after it's over. You can see Nepo having 33 minutes on the clock, whereas Fabi has only 25 seconds. So the last few decisions, well, by last few decisions, I mean the last 15 moves by Fabi were made in severe time trouble. So yeah, that's pretty much the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Zargal Solviev and Mihai Botea for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this Zagreb Grand Chess Tour, checking up on your suggestions, and if we really catch a moment, continuing the Capablanca saga simultaneously with the Grand Chess Tour. So yeah, thank you all. I will see you soon. Have an excellent rest of your day.